and we are live with our ninth office hours. How you doing this week, Alex?
Pretty good. How are you doing?
Doing good. The I've been watching this GameStop crazy action in the TradFi markets. It's been pretty absurd to watch the Wall Street Bets retail gang uh, stick it to the big hedge funds.
Yeah,
Have you been following that at all?
this is the real Occupy Wall Street movement, right?
Yeah, yes, exactly, and slightly more effective.
Yeah, that's true. Did they actually put this fund out of business, or it looks like they did, right?
Melvin Capital, yeah, I think they got bailed out initially, and
Mm.
then they put on another short, and then they just got uh, a little wrecked again.
Zeus Capital style.
Yes, exactly.
Nice.
And and obviously there's been some attempts in the so I think Robinhood went down. I'm just looking at a tweet right now from Nick Chong. Robinhood was down for 2 hours. TD Ameritrade placed restrictions on GME trades. Trading 212 disrupted service, and regulators suggested a 30-day GME halt. And so
Well,
next time people complain about Ethereum fees, they just need to think about what's going on in the traditional
yeah.
markets.
Guess where these degens are headed next, if they get banned from all these platforms and so on.
Yeah, fingers crossed they bring their degeneracy into the DeFi markets and explore the different fun protocols that we've got built.
Yeah. It's pretty interesting though to see these two worlds almost colliding. I mean, it's I would say like life imitates art in a way. TradFi imitating DeFi to some extent. It's a little bit yeah. It's funny. At some point, it seems like the scene is set for these worlds to collide.
Yeah, I was chatting with someone earlier who kind of draws parallels into previous times in history, and they were saying that this feels a lot like, or last year felt a lot like 1998.
Mm,
This year feels a lot like 1999 when E-Trade came out and a lot of retail investors got into the tech investing scene back
mm.
then. And that's really what this Robinhood thing feels like. It just feels like a lot of retail people getting involved in the markets. And I mean, I hope for everyone's sake that it ends up well for everyone, but we'll see how it shakes out in the end.
Yeah, I mean, if the outcome is that a bunch of retail traders get tons of profits where a big hedge fund eats the losses, I mean, I think we can live with that.
Yeah, yeah, it wouldn't be so bad. Um, so speaking of Nick Chung tweets, there's another one that he did recently about people getting into DeFi and kind of the best way to get your toes wet in DeFi. And I'll post it in the chat here real quick for anyone who's in, and they can give it a peek. I think it's actually a really good tweet because I mean, core message of it is load up some money onto an account and start playing around. And the fruits of these kind of playing around are airdrops. And there's been a lot of airdrops in the past 6 months or so,
Mm,
um, from 1inch to Badger with both the Badger token and Dig, Curve, Tornado Cash, Uniswap, and in the last week there were two semi-big ones. One was Stake DAO, and then, as I mentioned, or I already mentioned it, but Dig was the second one. So for anyone, I guess we'll take a step back here just real quick before we dive into the dashboards. Welcome everyone. If you're new here, feel free to ask questions in the chat on the side. We'll answer them as we chug along here in this session. We started a newsletter recently, so we've sent out a couple editions over the past couple weeks. So if you're interested in that, it's just at nansen.ai/news. You can sign up. And on last week's, hey, Gree, just saying hi in the chat. On last week's edition of the newsletter, we did actually highlight a couple of these airdrops, specifically Stake DAO and Dig. So I think I'll share my screen here real quick and we can dive in on Stake DAO first. So give it a second here to load. All right, can you see my screen?
Yep.
All right, so I already had StakeDAO loaded up here. Um, so StakeDAO is, how would you describe StakeDAO?
Oh man, I don't know. That's a good question. Effectively, it's a DAO, as the name suggests, a decentralized autonomous organization of, I think, different staking products and yield generating products.
Hmm.
So probably fits into the same sort of category as Yearn, for example. That's maybe one project you could compare it to. How would you describe it?
Yeah, I think that's about right. I mean, they're basically looking to create different strategies to get involved in or to help people get exposure to more sophisticated strategies in the DeFi space. So they've got strategies that they're working on for NFTs, for social tokens, for using flash loans, and I mean, we'll see how it plays out, but it's exciting to think that this is another example of a kind of decentralized hedge fund. And I haven't really dug into what the governance token really provides, whether it's fees or something like that, or decisions on strategies. But I think a lot of the excitement early on about Yearn was that it is this new age hedge fund that anyone in crypto can kind of participate in, and this is just another attempt at that model. So
Hmm.
um, one thing that's kind of interesting here that we can poke into. So they did do a pretty substantial airdrop to the community, and I believe just off memory, the majority of that went to people who participated in governance on different DeFi um, on different whatever DeFi protocols.
Hmm.
A good chunk of it also went to Gitcoin round eight participants. So anyone who donated funds or sponsored developers through Gitcoin, and then I think people who submitted their email to Rect, Julien holders like the token Julien, which is Julien Boutelou's social token, I guess.
Yeah.
So right now at stakedao.org, you can claim your tokens. I think it's you can claim it for another probably like 4 or 5 days. And here, after that big interlude, I probably should have loaded this dashboard up as we were talking. So here you can actually uh, look at staked out airdrop, and you can go scroll over to the right here and click on recipients, and you can check out who actually received the tokens and how much. And just based on what I'm looking at here, um, they've sent out 675K. There's still 800K left in the contract. I think in total they had 1.5 to give out. So there's still quite a bit here that of unclaimed stake or SDT. But in terms of looking at who these top claimers are, you can see here rect.eth, which I guess
Hmm.
it is probably the ENS address for the rect.news. Um, what else here? AI art, that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
And,
P2P.eth, which I think is the Lido guys.
oh, okay, nice. Let's see if we recognize anyone else in here.
It's quite
Classy.
quite a few ENS. Yeah, quite a few ENS names there.
Yeah, yeah, it's kind of cool. So, we won't dive too deep on here, but I just wanted to highlight that if you're curious of who received these airdrop tokens, this would be kind of where you can check.
Yeah.
Uh, Anything else to add on this stake down?
I mean, if you wanted to go sort of even one step further inside of that top depositors dashboard that you just had, we can also click down on the specific recipients to understand like what they did with the tokens, if they sold them, if they were providing them as liquidity to different dexes and so on. So you would basically just, for example, the Rect guys, right? Like if you would click that address, it would pop up the wallet profiler, and we can see if the Rect guys like dumped the tokens, which
I
which
don't I don't know if we
which I
want to show
doubt.
that on here.
Yeah. Oh, look at that. Well, maybe it is Julien himself. I mean, it looks like some of the ENS names below the main one that you see there
Yeah.
seems to fit him. He could have provided them as liquidity as well, though, right? Like,
Yeah. Well,
so
let's
we'll
see.
see that. So
So
there's, yeah, if you exactly if you sort like that, you will see the chronology. So he received not a lot of tokens, 759 tokens. They went into the Uniswap pool. You could click through on the transaction to see if it's like liquidity provisioning or selling. Let's see,
yeah,
transfer,
liquidity
add.
provisioning.
So yeah, so this kind of makes sense, right? Like if this actually belongs to Julien, he got the tokens and then he was like, well, I'll use these tokens to provide liquidity in the pool. So that makes sense. Right away you have a bit of an insight on like what at least one of the key people involved in StakeDAO did with the tokens.
Yeah. Yeah. So when you looked at here, you saw, what did you take a look at? So you saw add
Exactly. Yeah,
STT.
that's
Okay.
so the reason we for now have to click through on that Etherscan link is because either they provided liquidity to Uniswap or they sold the tokens,
Hmm.
right? Like in the Nansen dashboard, you just see that the tokens went into Uniswap. You don't see what the specific action was. So for now, the way to figure out if it was, selling or liquidity provisioning is just to go through on that link, look at the transaction action, and then it says add there, which indicates that it was, adding liquidity. It would have said something like sell or trade or something. Swap, I
Right.
think maybe is the word it would say if he sold them.
So here's a question, and I've never actually attempted this, but
Mm.
so since he received 30 LP tokens on
Yep.
for Uniswap V2,
Yeah,
and if we click through here, I guess maybe it'll show a token address, which is the token for this Uniswap V2 LP
that,
token.
that's right.
Could we plug that into Token God Mode Custom and
Yeah,
see the holders?
yeah,
Maybe
you
we can just
can.
play
Yeah,
around
you
with that
can.
real quick.
So we could try that out actually.
And while
Uh,
that's going, I'm going to load up Dig as well here, just because I think we'll be looking at that next.
cool. So you could go to I don't know if you have it open there on one of that one. Yeah, so that's how you find that Token God Mode Custom. It's exactly the same as Token God Mode, except you can add any token address. So it doesn't require us to whitelist it because there's obviously hundreds of thousands of tokens
Hmm.
and LP tokens and so on. So it's impossible for us to go through all of them. Of course, over time we will have a bit better processes to have token symbols and so on as you have in Etherscan. But for now, you can basically use Token God Mode Custom, plug in the token address, and you will get the familiar Token God Mode view. So yeah, so this is one way to see this. Balance changes. So these are people that basically are providing liquidity for this token. And yeah, you can sort by this column to see who are the kind of the ones who have increased their position. But you can then go down. Here we go. So it looks like 98%. I guess we're actually learning something here, which is cool. 98% of the LP tokens are sitting in the master chef address, which is probably sushi, right? So
Uh, it could be sushi, or it could be. Um, is there an incentive pool on StakeDAO.org
it's
for?
a they're saying it's in the chat. Thanks, Igor. They're saying it's a fork, which makes sense.
Right.
It's not sushi. Yeah. Okay. Look, these guys know more about this than us, which is good. So it's not sushi. It's a fork, but it still has the MasterChef name. And of course,
Right.
if you actually click through on the address, you would see that, right? That it's not the same thing. Um,
Maybe we
but
can
we
pull it
could
up really
do,
quick.
yeah, we could do top. Maybe we could do top depositors on this because you would see uh, who's actually. Yeah, there we go. Nice.
And it's got deposited. Yeah, it's got this. So
Cool.
it's the. I'm
It's
guessing it's somewhere
Stakeout's
in here.
own
Yeah.
exactly. So they probably forked sushi, and then that's the part of the liquidity provisioning incentives, right? So can you actually click on if you go back to the custom that one? Yeah, you can also click on depositors for MasterChef, which will tell you it will do the same thing as we did before, but it's going to show you who are the top addresses that are actually depositing their LP tokens here. So let's see if this works. It should, yeah, we don't have a token symbol, that's fine. It's because it's like a Uniswap LP token. Hopefully it'll work for the rest of the dashboard though. This should load up a bunch of addresses. There we go. Nice. There's a smart LP there. That's a good sign. Bunch of medium DEX traders, heavy DEX traders, etc. Nice. You want to click through? Maybe there's some more ENS names. Mybot.eth, greenfund.eth, Jameis.eth, VFAT.eth.
VFAT, that's a well-known one. For anyone who's for anyone who actively yield farms, they've got a site called vfat.tools where they list out, I think it was a fork of yieldfarmingtools.com or yieldfarming.tools or whatever it was. And they just show the APY of different projects.
Nice. Igor dropped a link there as well in the chat. Thanks, Igor. That's useful. Just take a little pause here to answer a question in the chat. Is Nansen working on bringing data from perp services or L2s? Yes, we are actively working on bringing data from L2s. Specifically, we're working on Optimism first, where Synthetix is basically, I shouldn't say migrating, but they're starting to use at least. And a few other projects are also going to use Optimism. The next one on our list is ZK Sync. And then there are a few more which we haven't decided on the exact order, but probably Loopring, XDAI, and Starkware are probably the next ones. So, but Optimism and ZK Sync are the first ones we will start supporting.
Perfect. We're back to it.
Yeah. So cool. So should we head over to Dig? Is that maybe what you? Cool.
So okay, so that wraps up the kind of discussion about StakeDAO, and just rewinding to what the purpose of it was. This is just that StakeDAO airdropped to people who are participating in DeFi governance. And so if I don't think anyone who's watching these streams is necessarily too new to DeFi. Most people are pretty experienced, but it's just, I guess we can all celebrate the fact that it's amazing that participating in DeFi, we get these airdrops, and it's also interesting, and it's interesting to dig into who is receiving them. So here we've got Dig token, which was the airdrop given out to anyone who continued to participate in the BadgerDAO ecosystem, or Badger.finance is the website, but I think the project is called BadgerDAO, which the goal for BadgerDAO is to integrate Bitcoin into DeFi. And so they had different flavors of wrapped Bitcoin that were incentivized for staking on their platform. And if you staked any of these forms of Bitcoin, wrapped Bitcoin, or WBTC Badger, or just straight up staked Badger on their platform, you were entitled to a Dig airdrop. So scrolling down here, I actually haven't looked at this specifically. I'm not really sure which contract was the airdrop contract. If I recall correctly, there were around 600 that were given out in the airdrop. So I'm guessing maybe it's one of these. In fact, this one would make sense probably because it's got 600, and I think most people have already claimed. So maybe let's double click on this one and just see if we'll roll the dice.
Yeah, I think normally we would actually have labels, but in this case, it looks like we don't. So I'm going to take that as an action to fix right away.
And while we're at it, let's label the Badger ones as well, because I don't think we have those ones either.
Yeah.
So here we go. Let's see. Perfect. So these are all the top recipients of Dig. So we've got 0xB1 here. They're a well-known smart money wallet. They also have a Twitter account if you haven't seen. Um, so that's interesting. It's interesting to see like what kind of the distribution is. So all these people received a fairly large airdrop, considering Dig starting price was like 70,000 bucks or something like that. I'm not sure what it's trading at now, but I think it's gone down a bit since then. So yeah, scrolling through here, we see these different names. This is interesting. I haven't seen this before. Have you, Alex? Is that a
Uh,
crown or is that a skull? Three
I,
skulls?
I think it's, yeah, I think I've seen that one before actually. Um,
All
yeah,
right, continuing to
pretty
scroll
cool.
through here, there's some other ENS addresses on here that we'll skip over. More smart money addresses, more smart LPs. Yeah, so I actually do think it's quite impressive that a lot of these smart LPs continued to participate in Badger DAO. I guess
Mm,
for them it was an airdrop that they could easily just roll over into uh, staking because everyone received the Badger airdrop, so everyone could easily just restake back in the contract. But these smart LPs, anyone who received like one more than one dig must have been. I guess this is rounded up, so it's not quite one. That could be anywhere between 0.5 and 1, but they clearly were staking enough that they received a large part of the airdrop, because the vast majority of people, I think, like sort of the long tail of people, received a lot less
mm,
than 0.5. And I guess
mm.
we can check here, or can we see how many people received?
I think the easiest is to where in the screen where you actually were.
Here?
Yeah, well, it actually just lists the first 2,000.
Yeah.
Um, if you scroll down, I'm not sure we have that stat here. We could probably add it. It's pretty easy to calculate. If you did, actually, if you plug this into Wallet Profiler, that would be one way to do it because it shows it. So if you just go back to the dig screen, and if you remember which one you clicked at, and you just click Profiler instead of the depositor, I'm pretty sure at the bottom of the screen it says how many unique addresses receive. Yeah, it's gonna pop up
Mm,
there. Received tokens from this one. So yeah, there we go.
6,000.
6,489. Yeah, that's quite a lot.
Interesting. Yeah. And like you can see here, the vast majority were claimed on the first day.
Yeah, that makes sense.
The data is always a little weird around the very time of the airdrop, just because of how it propagates in the system. But yeah, 315 down to 60, and now slowly trickling up.
Mm.
Okay, well that covers Dig, I would say, unless there's anything. I guess one other thing we can quickly look at here, which could be interesting, is maybe looking at the token overlap between Badger and Dig. And since most people claimed their Dig already, I guess we would kind of get a relatively complete picture of what the actual overlap was of, of people who were kind of actively involved in staking both.
Mm.
Or
Yeah, it's gonna show. I think it's gonna show the current balance though. So if they're staking, then I'm not sure how that is gonna show. And this is a pretty slow, so maybe we can just run that in the background. Um,
okay,
oh no, it's actually that was relatively fast. It used to be a bit slower. It's a lot of overlap though. Like this is relatively speaking, this is quite high on overlap.
yeah,
35%. Makes sense though, based on what you said earlier.
yeah, it's pretty good.
That's cool.
All right, well that covers, I think, Badger and StakeDAO. I'll stop screen sharing now, unless you want me to poke in on anything else.
Um, Maybe I can look at. Oh, we're looking at Opium. I think it just launched like an hour ago or something like that.
Yeah, I'll pass you the torch.
Okay, cool. Let's see if we can have a look at that. Let's see. I'm gonna share my screen here. Yeah, so I'm not quite sure what this is going to look like yet, because obviously it launched very recently, but we might be able to spot some stuff in here. Some of these numbers look a bit funky already, because the exchanges, for example, not all of the liquidity pools have sort of propagated into our systems to be labeled exchanges. So that part I would probably, skip over. But if you go down a bit, you can see, for example, balance changes. So people actually accumulating or receiving the token. This is maybe just to set the scene here. I can explain at least how I heard about this. Someone in our team at Nansen had used our smart alerts feature, and I think they had put a specific smart alert for this address, MilliDexTrader, because they'd noticed that this address tended to do a lot of good trades, which is also why it has a smart money icon. So what happened was that someone in the Nansen team said, hey, MilliDexTrader just bought this Opium token, and they probably just Googled it quickly and found that this had just launched. And I think 1inch also made a post on Twitter saying that you could now trade the Opium token. And if I remember correctly, I think MilliDexTrader dunked $50,000 into it, which seemed like pretty high conviction. And then that's how I learned about this token. So balance changes. You see like the multi-sig, you see team and investors, you see governance reserve fund that we've already labeled up based on that, and you can see basically like how the tokens were distributed. So you see the minting take place here, like 100 million goes into the multi-sig, then the multi-sig sends to team and investors and to the governance reserve fund, and then there are other distributions going out from the multi-sig, but also there are distributions happening from team and investors. So maybe they're being claimed, maybe there's some kind of vesting or something. I'm not sure. I haven't looked at that very closely yet. But you also see the trade, the MilliDexTrader trade here at the bottom. It was actually one of the bigger transactions that had happened. Looks like they're still holding. You see maker auction winner, and one thing you could do is like, well, team and investors. Maybe you want to figure out who are like the insiders of this project, like Opium, and so you could go to the same view we looked at earlier, like recipient. So who received Opium tokens from that address? And so we're going to load this up now, and it's going to show basically who has been receiving tokens from this address. And we might want to know like what are these quote unquote insiders doing with their tokens. So there's a couple of them here, all of them very recent. These times are in UTC, so it's basically like two hours ago. Most of them 1 to 2 hours ago. Let's look at the biggest one, and we can profile them to see what they did with their tokens. Did they dump them or what happened? Maybe we can pick a couple of these, like the 3 top ones. And as with most of our live streams, like I've not actually looked at this before, so I have no idea what we're gonna find, if there's anything interesting or not. Well, I guess it's interesting that they have a token balance of 0 now. So let's see what happened. I guess the tokens came in and then they went somewhere. So let's see. I'm gonna sort this by time. So they received 40,000, and then it was sent to a bunch of other addresses. So my guess this is actually just distributing it to other investors, perhaps. Maybe it was some kind of
distributor contract or something like that.
Yeah, I don't think it was a contract though. I mean, we could like confirm that. I mean, it would have had like a little robot icon, so I don't think it's a contract.
Right.
But it could be one of these syndicates or something. I actually don't know, so I'm not going to speculate too much. But it looks like at least it received from 2 addresses, the Opium team and investors, and then another one, which I think was at the very end here, a DexTrader address, and then it went out to 8 different addresses. So Could be a syndicate, could be something else. I'm not actually sure. Maybe they're just trying to hide their tracks a bit. But yeah, so I don't want to speculate too much on what it is, but this could be an interesting one to research a bit more to see what these tokens are and where they actually went. If we jump to the next one, this one received as well from, let's see, yeah, this one claimed, probably they were claiming from that contract, right? 60 tokens, then sent them somewhere else, then they claimed more or received more at least. Actually, we can maybe look to see if you can see on Etherscan if it's some kind of claim. Wrapped opium. Okay, interesting. Transfer events and then some unknown events. Okay, well that's quite interesting. Yeah, they received from that wallet at least, and then sent them on to a couple of other addresses, 3 different other addresses. So that's maybe something that you can look into if you want. Then the last one we looked at, okay, 10,000 tokens. Let's see, they received 20,000 from the Opium team and investors. That went straight into 1inch, which I believe is probably a sell order. Yeah, so I mean, it's not a huge amount, but they sold 500 Opium for 3 Ether right away. So, yeah, hopefully it's an investor, not someone in the team, but like, yeah, some kind of insider selling some tokens. Let me just load this back up again. Let's see. Here we go. What did they do? So they sold 5,000 and then, but they bought back again, it seems, 4,500. Maybe they got a
No,
better
well,
price.
that was in the same transaction. So I think they
Oh,
just,
okay. Makes sense.
yeah,
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, I should have spotted that because you see exactly the same time here, right? Interesting.
and then are those more sells or what?
Yeah, let's have a look. Let's click on a couple of these. Swap, yeah, selling for 6 Ether, selling for 3.7 Ether. And let's look at, yeah, this last one. Looks like they just moved it somewhere else to this address. Yeah, we can do the same thing with this though. Let me just copy the URL to a new tab, and then I'll plug in this other address. So they moved funds maybe to another address. And like, why do we do this? I mean, it's not just because it's fun, I mean, interesting, but I guess as an investor, you'd want to know what some of the key people holding this token and who received it early, what they're actually doing with it. There could be good reasons for selling, by the way. They could be, hedged somewhere else, or, there's many reasons for that. It doesn't necessarily mean that they, don't like the project or anything like that. But it's good for you if you're doing some due diligence, considering, for example, buying this token. It's good for you to have the full overview of what some of the insiders are doing with their token. So it looks like they sent them to this other address, 7,000 tokens, and then looks to me that they were selling it, but let's confirm. So I'm going to just click through on a couple of these. Swap 150 Opium, yep. Swap Opium, yeah. So they seem to just have like sent it to another address, and that address just sold in like small chunks. So okay, cool. That's what one of the first recipients of that token did. Interesting.
Can we check the wallet profiler for that address? Not for token, but just wallet profiler.
Yeah, let's do that. So people have requested this before, and we still haven't done it. This should be like a quick link from here to the main wallet profiler. But what I do is I have this shortcut, and so I simply just paste it in, and I have a shortcut to the URL. We have a YouTube video on how to set that up if you want to set up the same thing. Interestingly, it has no labels in Nansen, which is a little bit unusual actually. So they have kind of gone under the radar. They received Ether from FTX, a lot of Ether actually, which is kind of interesting. You can look at the time profile. I mean, looks like Americas to me. Definitely not Asia, because people in Asia would be active in this time slot when this one is sleeping. So FTX, okay, some Uniswap. And then if you really want to dig deep and like do an investigation to try to figure out if this is some specific like early, like VC fund or some kind of early investor, to figure out what they're doing with their tokens, I can show you a quick tip in the remaining minutes we have. So you can look at where they sent their tokens and see if there are any exchange deposit addresses. For example, did they send funds to FTX or to Binance or to Kraken or anything like that? And if they did, sometimes you can use those deposit addresses to discover other addresses they own. And if those are known, for example, belonging to a fund, then it's very likely, not always true, but it's very likely that it belongs to the same fund. So let me try to show you how that's done in practice. For example, I could look at ETH vol out. That means where was the Ether sent? And so if I click this, it's going to sort. You might have to click it twice because it sorts sort of ascending and then it sorts descending. But okay, there's a lot of ETH that was sent to an FTX deposit wallet. Looks like there was a little bit of ETH sent to a Kraken deposit wallet. But maybe we could have a look at this FTX one first. I'm not going to go too deep into this rabbit hole, but if I plug this into the wallet profiler as well, I can see if there are other addresses that sent funds to the same FTX deposit wallet. And this is typically unique to an individual user on FTX, right? That's why it can sometimes give you an indication of, which fund, for example, is sending to it. And it looks pretty rich already. 189,000 Ether has gone into this specific deposit wallet. So it's definitely a big account that it was traded with. You see, OKX, BlockFi, Binance, Alameda, OTC, a lot of different counterparties. And now you can do sort of the opposite. You can look at the specific addresses by looking at ETH volume in. And you see, some of the same entities that we had sort of aggregated up here, but you can also see the individual addresses. And so do you spot anything that is interesting and could indicate if this is like a fund or something? To me, it's not very clear looking at this. I mean, there's a multi-sig owner. That's kind of interesting. There's obviously Alameda OTC, which, just to be clear, is different from Alameda Research. I mean, it's the same entity, but it doesn't mean that it's Alameda Research, the fund itself, necessarily. It could simply have been an OTC deal that was made with Alameda.
I would say it definitely seems like a fund, just based on the exchanges that they're using, are across multiple geographies, and like BitMax and Gemini and FTX, something like that. I mean, if they've got Gemini and FTX, then you can assume that they're either maybe Canadian or or they're a fund that can like pass the KYC on both of these exchanges.
Yeah.
Because I guess FTX would direct you to FTX US, but Gemini would just be for US customers.
That's a good observation. We could look at this BitMax deposit just very briefly to have a quick look if there's anything interesting there. But because you see it sent 53 tokens to that wallet. So there's a lot of kind of obscure tokens as well. So I'm sure someone who like knows this fund would be able to recognize it because the tokens they use are quite unique, and also the exchanges they use are quite unique. So with a combination of all this evidence, you can probably figure out which fund owns this wallet. So this is the BitMax, not to be confused with BitMEX, but BitMax deposit. And you said this is a Canadian exchange, or?
No, no, no. I was just speculating that maybe they are Canadian because Canadians can usually do KYC on a lot of different
Right,
exchanges that US people can't.
right, that makes sense. So token transactions coming into this one, the 53 one is actually the same one we just looked at. So that's like where the funds came in. But here's another one, another heavy DEX trader, which then likely belongs to the same entity, 305. I actually, because I looked at do you remember when we looked at the 7,000 tokens that were sent to another address? Where it was sold for 1,000 in batches. I think that was the
Right?
same address as this one. So it just
Oh,
confirms
maybe.
that those two are the same entity, actually.
Yeah.
Maybe you can't see it on the screen, but I'm just looking at the link in the lower left on my screen.
Oh, yeah, yeah. You can see that. It's hidden by our
Yeah.
faces, but it's
So basically, I mean, we just learned a couple of different things. Like, we learned a bit about this fund's profile, presumed fund, because the volumes are pretty big and they look kind of professional in the the amount of money we're talking about and so on. And then it looks like at least those two addresses belong to the same entity. So if anyone wants to research that, that might be a good place to start. So I think I'll pause there, or stop there rather. Um, any concluding remarks from your side, Daniel?
no, I think we'll start wrapping it up there. If anyone has any questions in the last kind of couple minutes, feel free to put it in the chat. Um, I guess what I'll mention is there's been quite a bit of interest lately in the VIP tier on Nansen, which is great to see. So I guess I'll just give that a little plug, which is basically like the features that you would get are early access to certain features. So we've had smart alerts available for VIPs for a little while now. Certain dashboards like the Dex Trades dashboards, um, CSV downloads available, and then also kind of a tight community of investors and traders that are chatting on a regular basis about different yield farming opportunities and trading opportunities. So if you're ever interested in that, feel free to reach out to Alex or I on Discord or Twitter, and we're happy to chat about that.
Yeah, I see there's a question about smart alerts here as well, the roadmap about that feature. So maybe for those of you who don't know, smart alerts is a pretty new feature that we launched where you can get notifications on Discord, Telegram, or Slack when certain events take place. And it's pretty, I think, in a good way, pretty generic in how you can configure it. So you can create your own smart alerts where, for example, you want to get a notification every time someone sends, let's say a dig transaction worth more than $100,000. You can get a notification in your own Telegram group whenever that happens, or specific addresses like certain addresses that you've spotted as being smart money, smart LPs, sort of funds or insiders of sorts. You can set up alerts for them as well. So whenever they make certain token transfers or just any transaction, you will get alerts. And the alerts are basically, within the seconds of after them actually happening. So the latency is quite low. And at least for now, you can set up 3 different smart alerts. And you can of course delete smart alerts, replace them, and so on. But that's how we have set it up for now. So the roadmap of it, I wouldn't say it's a very sort of clear long-term roadmap. We do have some features that just organically come up because people ask for them. That's typically how we do product development at Nansen. People are quite hungry for features, so we tend to just listen to what our customers want, and then we try to ship those features as fast as possible. So, for example, some people have asked if they can make their own custom segments or custom labels. So, for example, let's say you're interested in like all of the Ample holders. we want to be able to give you the opportunity to create a segment for that, to say all Ample holders, and that's your own custom segment. And then you can create a smart alert for that specific segment. And so that just makes the whole feature even more, data driven and more customizable. So that's one thing I think we're going to add eventually. Other things to add, I think we might add more platforms or more channels where you can receive the alerts. Someone asked about Keybase. That sounds a bit niche, but like maybe we'll add that if the more people want it. And there's also some interesting things going on with alerts that we're researching internally, because not all alerts can be expressed through the sort of smart alert setup. So we do have some other things. For example, when we spot a lot of addresses sending money to a specific contract, that could be an indication that a new yield farm just launched. So we have basically some beta testing internally for a feature where you get alerts when people ape into contracts. So you will see, 27 different addresses just, aped $3 million into this new contract. Of course, none of this stuff is investment advice, but you might want to know that just happened. So that's, I think, another feature we will roll out. I'm not sure exactly how we will integrate it into the product, because it's not like the other smart alerts. But you could think of this as more like curated smart alerts, right? Where we actually try to come up with parameter settings for you, and you can subscribe to those alerts. So those are at least some ideas on what's going to come for the smart alerts feature. But honestly, I think it's already pretty useful. Like, I've used it a lot. People in our team are using it. I get messages from other people outside of the team who are quite happy using it. And even this recent look we took at Opium, the token we were just looking at in Token God mode, that whole analysis was spurred from smart alerts. Like, that's where it came from. Someone had set up a trigger for one of the addresses that bought it very early, and that's how it popped up on our radar. So smart alerts can really also add to the discovery, not just for stuff that you already are following, like specific tokens, but when you look at the addresses, you can actually discover new tokens as well.
Yeah. So in terms of the ape alerts, what are the thoughts on integrating that one? I know you kind of mentioned it there, but how for these kind of custom indicators that are being developed, what are when are we going to roll those things out?
So I can't say exactly when. I mean, but we're probably talking weeks rather than months. And then I think we have to figure out the distribution of those. Like, should it just be a tick box inside of your existing smart alerts dashboard, and you get those alerts to the same, say, Telegram or Discord, or is it something where we just set up our own Telegram and you can, like, Nansen users can join it, right? We have to figure out the distribution, I think. Yeah, so probably weeks, I mean, just estimating something like 3 or 4 weeks, because we do want to test it a bit more internally. And then, yeah, hopefully people should be able to get those alerts by then. Happy to see Igor saying he found so much alpha already from one day of using smart alerts. That's cool. It is pretty cool, I have to say. It is quite cool when you step out of the sort of dashboard paradigm that we are used to. At least at Nansen, we look at dashboards a lot. And when you just see stuff in real time and you get these alerts, it sort of just makes you think a bit differently and spot different patterns, which is quite cool. So that's really the experience we're trying to make with Nansen. We want to create a very holistic sort of, I think of it as like an Iron Man suit, the Iron Man suit that you put on when you enter the DeFi markets, and you have like all these amazing tools at your disposal. So you have, sort of amplified senses, in dealing with that environment. So yeah, that's really what we're trying to do with all these different features. Basically, just make you extremely well equipped to go into these DeFi markets and make a lot of money.
There you go. I can't think of a better way to end the this session. Thank you everyone for joining. And as always, feel free to message us on any of the platforms, and we'll see you next Wednesday. Take care.
Thanks, guys. Bye bye.